Hi everyone, I'm Daniel Cohen and welcome to my house. I'm one of the owners of Beigel Bake Bakery Brick Lane, and we're going to go through a home Beigel recipe. So it's very similar to what we do at the bakery, but obviously certain aspects and ingredients may differ considering this is for home use and not commercial. Come over here, let's get started. So here's the strong white bread flour. We're going to put in 800 grams. At work we use malted barley powder, we just call it malt flour. This is malt extract. It's probably a little bit easier for everybody else to get hold of. I got this at Holland and Barrett's. It's very sticky. Here I have 500 mils of the water. I'm going to add in around 400 to start with, and then, because flour absorbs waters in different amounts depending on how hydrated it is itself to start with. So I'll hold some back just in case it's too much. Here we have 7 grams of instant dry yeast. You can just follow the directions on the packet. Some of them ask you to activate it first, which basically means you have to make sure it's not dead and alive. So what you do is you put it in some water and mix it up with a touch of sugar and leave it on the side for a while. And if it foams and bubbles on top, you know it's alive, but I've used this batch many times, I know it's fine. There's the salt, 14 grams of salt. And here we have 60 grams of regular white granulated sugar. Okay, as we do at work, I'm going to use the machine. So I've got a home stand mixer. I recommend you start on the lowest setting and work your way up, but we wouldn't want to use a fast setting ever on this because we'll overwork the dough and it will start getting hot. We don't really want the temperature to change too much, but we do want it to be well combined. Okay, so it's mixing away. This will take a bit of time. But basically, you want all of the flour to be completely hydrated, and then once it's fully combined, you will leave the machine to knead the dough for you. You can do this by hand, and in fact, once the dough comes together, I will show you quickly. So here's the rest of the water, and I actually think that may be enough. So a Beigel dough is much drier and firmer than a regular bread dough. So I think it's around 50% hydration, something like that. So I'll show you now, it's come together. And you can see that's here. And yeah, I definitely think that's enough water, so I'll put this away. I will quickly go through if you want, kneading by hand, and then I'll just put it back in the machine to finish it off. You could do this any way you want. Basically, the simple principle is that you want to fold the dough onto itself and keep playing with it. And basically what you're doing is, I dusted the table so it doesn't stick. Basically what you're doing is stretching out the gluten, and that will make long strands, and what that basically does is build structure in your dough. And what that means is when the yeast is doing its job, which basically what the yeast does is it eats up the sugars and the malt and the other bits and pieces within the dough. You see I'm just rocking it back and forth, so I've put it back on top of itself and push forward. So what the yeast does is it eats up the sugars and stuff, and then they multiply, and as they do so, they create carbon dioxide bubbles. It's just a reaction, and that's what helps the dough rise. But if you imagine that your dough didn't have any structure and the proteins in the flour, which is what the gluten is, weren't linked and joined together and didn't have any structure, it wouldn't puff up and become nice and domed. It would more or less collapse in on itself because there's nothing to hold the air. So that's basically what we're doing here. So you just carry on doing this and that, and you can see already it was like quite bitty, and you could see parts of flour in it and whatnot, and it was less of a uniform colour, whereas here you can see it's a little more uniform colour, although you see here, it's tearing, right? It's not got any spring to it or bounce. I push it and it stays where I put it, and I pull it apart and it doesn't really want to retract back into itself. It's not elastic at all whatsoever. The more and more you knead it, the more elastic and more structure your dough will have. So you just basically keep on rocking and rocking and rocking, and there's something called a window pane test. But really, I mean, I've never ever done that. I do it by eye, and you can kind of tell when the dough is ready. It will become slightly lighter in color, and it will be very smooth. and you just push it, it will spring back. You pull it and you'll see as it's starting to already, but it really will come back in on itself. So okay, I'm just gonna put this back in the mixer now. Hey guys, hi everybody, these are my children. This is Talia, my oldest, Jacob, middle son, and Aaron, my youngest. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love playing things in the kitchen, right? So yeah, this is an amazing activity that you can all do at home. It's loads of fun, they learn, it kills time. Just, you know, everyone enjoys baking. Looking good. So if you ever come to visit us, you will see us continuously putting our hands in the mixer, checking to see if the dough's ready. Okay, so it's much stretchier than it was before, and it's not breaking apart as I pour it. It could do with probably another 3 to 5 more minutes, and I think we'll be there. So let's put it back on. Okay, so after around 10 minutes, which it has been, take a look inside your bowl. You should see, well, more or less what I see. The dough has come together. It's pulled away entirely from the sides. And let me stop it for you. There we go. And I'll lift it up, and you can see that's smooth and round and all jointed together. And yeah, that's basically what you're looking for. Let's take this off the dough hook. Well, and it's very elastic. Okay, so I've removed the dough hook, so no longer need that anymore. And let's have a look at what we have here. Put them to the side. So here you can see it's very springy. It comes back as I push in on it. If I pull it apart, it comes back. It's really smooth. And yep, it's precisely what we're looking for. So do your best, bring it together into a ball. And then what you need to do now is you need to leave it on the side to rest for about 15 to 30 minutes. So, I mean, it depends on how warm your kitchen is, how warm the water used is, and how much yeast you use. But in our situation, I would say about 20 minutes should do it. It just needs a bit of a rest for 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm going to put it back in here. And you may want to put a little bit of oil in the bottom and wipe it around. Not too much, because you want to make the dough oily. You don't really, you know, Beigels don't really have any fat or anything in them. Just to avoid the dough from sticking to your bowl. Place it into your bowl, and I will cover it with some cling film. Set it aside somewhere, forget about it for about 15 to 20 minutes. This has now been resting for 15 minutes. I've taken it out, you can see it's relaxed and it grew slightly, but not that much. If you left it for longer, obviously it would grow hugely, but that's not what you want. This isn't bread here. Bagels are much denser than bread is. So at work, generally we scale our bagels at around 120, say 110 to 120 grams. So I say really at home, if you wanted, you could go a touch bigger. I'm thinking that let's go 120 to 25. So you may not have one of these at home. You can use a knife, or you can pull it apart by your hands. It really doesn't matter. There we go. And there we go. Near enough there. And there are those. Take these and you might want to do this with one hand, I'm using two. And literally just bring them to a ball shape. So I'll demonstrate one for you, and then my kids will come over and join us because they love doing this. Okay, so first, I'll take your ball, roll it backwards and forwards in your palm. Eventually, the sausage will grow bigger than your palm, and you'll notice that either end starts creeping up. You don't want that, you want your sausage to be even. So introduce your other hand, and you can continue rolling backwards and forwards. Eventually, after 1 or 2 rocks, you'll come to a point where not much is happening. A trick here is to, as you roll, separate your hands slightly, giving downwards pressure. What that will do is slowly elongate and stretch out the sausage and help you do it much more. It's much faster and more efficient way of doing it. And on top of that, rather than just pulling it out by itself, it eases the dough apart. If you were to just grab this and pull it along, you would notice that the skin would tear and break, and you'd have a horrible looking bagel. So here we go, that's long enough. You'll notice that you have to go slightly longer. So the idea here is to take the sausage and wrap it around your palm. Now you definitely need to roll the sausage longer than the circumference of your palm, simply because you want it to overlap, and also you're fighting the dough coming back in on itself as it's elastic. So bring it around your palm, fold it over, give it a slight press with your thumb, and then literally just roll it in your hand. And it should throw it off, and you can see here, you've got a perfectly formed bagel. So now that the bagels are formed, as I was doing it, I was just throwing them onto the work surface. Now you'll notice they've not been there that long, but already look, they're starting to stick. Okay, so remedy. Over here I have a baking tray with greaseproof paper, and I've oiled it. So let's just place them on there. And this will prevent them from sticking, and they're going to have another rest and a rise. And what this basically is, the yeast further activating and, you know, the dough proving a bit more. You can either cover this with a piece of cling film, as I'm going to, or a damp tea towel. And now we'll need to leave that to rest for a further half an hour, and I'll show you the third step. Hi, so our bagels have been resting for half an hour, and now it's time to put them into a boiling water. So what I did was I got a heavy wide pot, I filled it up with hot water and brought it to a simmer. So here, I'm going to take the bagels and put them into the simmering water. I mean, I could probably fit about 4 in here. Now, don't worry if they, it's boiling too heavily. Don't worry if they sink to the bottom, that's fine, as long as within 20 seconds or so, they rise up to the top, as they're starting to for me. And sometimes they may hit the bottom of the pan and stick, so just give them a tiny nudge with the spatula. Now you want them to be in the simmering water, and you want to move them around every so often for around 1.5 to 2 minutes. I also have a tray with a rack. So what this will do is simply allow excess water to drip off the bagels before I put them onto a prepared baking tray, another baking tray with some parchment paper on, and that's what we'll put into the oven. The reason I'm moving them around is simply because you want them to be evenly boiled. Take this out. So now I'm placing them onto the baking tray, and as what I'm doing now is simply because when they're agitated and move around the water, sometimes they misshape. So I'm just helping make them nice and round again. Okay, so now I've positioned them on the tray equally apart. They will grow and touch each other a bit, but that doesn't really matter. You just pull them apart when it's cooked. Oh, they're ready. Homemade bagels. Now all you have to do is open up, fill and enjoy.